I'm Amber Wilson, 32, and I never thought my father would tell me to disappear from his life. Growing up, we were inseparable: fishing trips, homework help, proud smiles at my graduation. Yet last year, Dad looked me in the eyes and said, "Don't show up again," all because I wouldn't give him more money for a guaranteed investment. Despite everything, I kept helping my parents financially. Then their loan collapsed, revealing truths that shattered our family forever. Before I share my story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you've ever felt the sting of family ties snapping under financial pressure. Portland, Oregon painted the backdrop of my childhood, a place where the rain seemed to nurture not just the lush greenery, but our family bonds too. Our modest two-story house in the Selwood neighborhood wasn't luxurious, but it was undeniably home. My father, David Wilson, worked as a construction manager for a mid-sized company, his calloused hands always smelling faintly of sawdust and coffee. My mother, Meredith, taught third grade at the local elementary school, returning home each afternoon with colorful paper scraps stuck to her sweaters and stories of her students' antics. Financial stability wasn't something I thought about as a child. Bills were paid, groceries appeared in our fridge, and though we didn't have the newest gadgets or fanciest clothes, we never felt deprived. What I valued most were our annual trips to Cannon Beach. Dad would rent a small cabin for a week each summer, and we'd spend days combing for sand dollars, building elaborate castles, and watching the sunset at Haystack Rock. Those trips were sacred. Dad's work phone stayed off, Mom left her lesson plans at home, and for 7 precious days, it was just the 3 of us against the world. The ocean reminds us how small our problems really are, Dad would say, standing ankle-deep in the surf, his arm around my shoulders. Remember that, Amber. No matter what happens in life, there's always something bigger than yourself. Those words would echo back to me years later, with bitter irony. My academic journey began with straight A's in high school, culminating in a scholarship to the University of Washington. The day the acceptance letter arrived, Dad hung it on the refrigerator like I was still in elementary school. "My daughter, the first Wilson to go to college," he announced to anyone who'd listen, neighbors, cashiers, even strangers at gas stations. His pride was palpable, and it fueled my determination to succeed. Seattle opened a new chapter in my life. The financial advisor program was rigorous, but I thrived on the challenge. Between classes, I worked part-time at a local bank, learning the practical side of the financial world that textbooks couldn't teach. Graduation day arrived faster than expected, my parents beaming in the audience as I received my diploma. "We didn't give you much, but you made the most of it," Mom whispered as she hugged me afterward, tears in her eyes. I wanted to tell her she'd given me everything I needed: stability, encouragement, love, but the words caught in my throat. The job market proved more challenging than classroom exams. 3 months of rejections tested my resolve until Westlake Financial Partners took a chance on a fresh graduate. The entry-level position paid modestly, but I approached each task with the same dedication I'd applied to my studies. Late nights, working weekends, volunteering for difficult projects. I did whatever it took to prove my worth. The strategy paid off. Within 3 years, I advanced to junior advisor, then senior advisor by my 28th birthday. Clients trusted my guidance, colleagues sought my input, and management recognized my potential. Financial security, something I'd taken for granted as a child, became my professional expertise and personal achievement. Meanwhile, subtle changes appeared during my visits home. The seasonal decorations Mom loved remained in storage. Dad's trusted truck looked increasingly battered. The refrigerator held store-brand basics instead of the specialty items Mom once splurged on. When I mentioned these observations, their responses came too quickly, too brightly. "We're just simplifying," Mom would say. "Less stuff, less stress," Dad would add. I might have believed them if not for the prescription bottles I noticed on Mom's nightstand during an overnight stay, medication for conditions she'd never mentioned. Or the collection notices I glimpsed beneath a magazine when looking for a pen. Or the repair tape holding their couch cushions together. The recession hit Oregon harder than Washington. Dad's construction company downsized, reducing his hours and eliminating the bonuses that had funded our beach trips. Mom's school district implemented a hiring freeze, halting the salary increases she'd counted on. They never directly asked for help. Their pride wouldn't allow it, but the need became increasingly obvious. My first attempt to assist came in the form of a check as a thank you for supporting my education. "We didn't put you through school to become your dependents," Dad said, returning the uncashed check during my next visit. I tried again with practical gifts, new kitchen appliances, prepaid utility bills, gift cards to their favorite restaurants, items they couldn't easily refuse without seeming ungrateful. Mom accepted these with tearful thanks, while Dad maintained a stoic silence that grew heavier with each gift. Finally, I set up automatic monthly transfers to their account, small enough to not wound Dad's pride, but sufficient to ease their most pressing concerns. Mom called to acknowledge the first deposit, her voice a mixture of gratitude and embarrassment. "Your father doesn't need to know exactly where this came from," she suggested. "I'll tell him it's from my tutoring." That was the first time Mom had ever asked me to lie to Dad, and it should have been a warning sign. Instead, I saw it as a practical solution and agreed. That small deception would grow into a pattern that ultimately contributed to our family's unraveling. As my career flourished, I met Ryan Thompson, a software engineer whose kindness and stability complemented my ambitious nature. After 3 years together, he proposed during a weekend trip to Vancouver. The ring was exactly what I would have chosen, a simple solitaire that sparkled without ostentation. We immediately called my parents to share the news. "That's wonderful, sweetie," Mom said, her enthusiasm seeming forced. "Good for you," Dad added after an awkward pause. "Ryan's a decent guy." Their lukewarm reaction stung, but I attributed it to bad timing or a poor connection. Later, I would understand it was something far more complicated. Thanksgiving arrived 2 months after our engagement. Ryan and I packed overnight bags and made the 3-hour drive from Seattle to Portland, planning to announce our wedding date and discuss initial plans. The familiar streets of my childhood neighborhood welcomed us, though I noticed more foreclosure signs than in previous visits. The family home looked shabbier than I remembered, gutters sagging, paint peeling around the windows, the front garden overtaken by weeds. Mom greeted us with her usual warmth, though the shadows beneath her eyes spoke of sleepless nights. Dad's hug felt perfunctory, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. The holiday table told its own story. Gone were Mom's traditional homemade dishes, replaced by store-bought alternatives. The good china remained in cabinets, everyday plates taking their place. Dad's usual pre-dinner whiskey had multiplied to 3 by the time we sat down to eat. "So," I said, trying to lighten the mood, "we're thinking about a June wedding, nothing too elaborate. Maybe 50 guests at that botanical garden in Seattle." Mom managed a genuine smile. "That sounds lovely, dear." Dad stabbed at his turkey. "Gardens are expensive. A courthouse works just as well." Ryan squeezed my hand under the table, a silent signal to tread carefully. "We've been saving," he offered, "and Amber's firm gives employees a wedding bonus." "Well, isn't that special?" Dad muttered, refilling his glass. Mom shot him a warning glance before turning to me. "How's work, Amber? Still enjoying the financial world?" "It's going really well," I replied, grateful for the subject change. "I just took on several new clients and my portfolio performance has been—" "Must be nice," Dad interrupted, "playing with other people's money while real workers lose everything." "David, please," Mom whispered.
"What?"
"She should know what's happening. Not everyone gets cushy office jobs and wedding bonuses." The room fell silent. Ryan studied his plate, while Mom blinked rapidly, fighting tears. I set down my fork, suddenly understanding the tension. "Dad, what's going on? What aren't you telling me?" The question hung in the air until Mom finally answered. "Your father lost his job 6 months ago. The company closed their Portland office." Dad glared at her. I was going to find the right time to tell her. "When?" Mom's voice rose uncharacteristically. "After they take the house? We're 3 months behind on the mortgage, Amber. The bank sent a final notice last week." The revelation hit like a physical blow. 3 months? Why didn't you say something sooner? I could have helped. We don't need charity, Dad snapped. It's not charity, it's family, I countered, professional calm deserting me. What about your savings? The emergency fund? Dad's laugh held no humor.
Gone.
Medical bills took everything. I turned to Mom, who avoided my gaze. What medical bills? Are you sick? Thyroid condition, then complications, she admitted. Insurance covered some, but the deductibles specialists. Her voice trailed off. I'm working part-time at the school as an aide, she continued after a moment. But it's not enough with the medications and mortgage. Ryan, who had remained silent, finally spoke. Mr. Wilson, Mrs. Wilson, Amber, and I can help. At least with catching up the mortgage, so you have breathing room to figure things out. Dad pushed back from the table. You think throwing money at us solves everything? That we need your handouts? Dad, I pleaded, it's not about handouts. It's about preventing a crisis. Let me pay the mortgage arrears, then we can sit down together and make a plan. A plan, he repeated flatly. You and your fancy financial plans. Mom reached for his hand. David, please. We need to be practical. The standoff lasted several tense moments before Dad's shoulders sagged in defeat.
Fine.
Do whatever you want. You will anyway. Relief mixed with hurt as I outlined an immediate plan. I would contact their mortgage company tomorrow, pay the overdue amount, and help them restructure their finances. Mom expressed tearful gratitude, while Dad nodded stiffly, excusing himself before dessert. Later, helping Mom with dishes, I asked the question weighing on me. Why didn't you tell me sooner? She concentrated on scrubbing a pot that was already clean. Your father, his pride, he didn't want you to think less of him. I could never think less of him, I said, meaning it despite the evening's tension. He's always been the provider. Suddenly needing help from his daughter, it's difficult for him to accept. I understood theoretically, but couldn't reconcile this with the practical reality of potentially losing their home. Still, Mom, 3 months behind? That's serious. I know, she whispered. I wanted to call you sooner, but each time I tried, he'd promised things would turn around. A job interview looked promising, or an old colleague mentioned an opportunity. She set down the pot, hands trembling. I should have been stronger, should have insisted. Ryan and I had planned to stay the entire weekend, but the atmosphere remained strained. Dad made passive-aggressive comments about city people and their easy money, each barb cutting deeper than he knew. When he suggested my success came from looking good in a skirt rather than actual financial acumen, I decided we needed to leave. We have an early meeting tomorrow, I lied, packing our bags Sunday morning instead of after dinner as planned. Mom didn't believe me, but didn't challenge the excuse. Thank you, she whispered as we hugged goodbye. For everything. Dad offered a curt nod from his armchair, eyes fixed on a football game he wasn't really watching. As we pulled away from the house, I fought back tears, wondering how the family that once seemed so unbreakable had developed such deep cracks. They'll come around, Ryan assured me, misreading my silence as concern about the money. Once they're back on their feet, your dad will see you were just trying to help. I nodded, wanting to believe him. The reality would prove far more complicated. The mortgage company agreed to waive some late fees after I paid the overdue balance and established automatic payments for my account. Next came the medical bills, a stack higher than I anticipated, revealing treatments and medications Mom had never mentioned. Some dated back years, suggesting her health issues had been a long-term concern kept hidden from me. Ryan helped me create a comprehensive spreadsheet tracking all payments, a system to organize the growing financial commitment to my parents. Between the mortgage, medical expenses, and a modest monthly stipend for groceries and utilities, almost 30% of my income now went to supporting them. We adjusted our own budget, postponing the kitchen renovation we'd planned and scaling back our wedding vision. It's temporary, I assured Ryan. Just until Dad finds work and they stabilize. He never complained, Though I noticed him checking our joint accounts more frequently, a small furrow between his brows that hadn't been there before. Dad's job search proceeded with sporadic enthusiasm. He'd pursue a position aggressively for days, then grow discouraged by the lower salaries offered or the preference for younger workers with updated skills. Each rejection reinforced his narrative that the system was rigged against experienced workers like himself. Mom's health continued to require attention, new specialists, additional medications, tests that insurance deemed optional, but doctors called necessary. Each time she apologetically forwarded a bill, I paid it without comment, not wanting her to forgo treatment out of financial concern. Our phone conversations fell into a pattern. Mom would call with genuine interest in my life and work, then eventually mention an unexpected expense: car repairs, property taxes, appliance failures. Dad rarely came to the phone during these calls, though I could sometimes hear him in the background, suggesting items to add to the growing list of needs. 3 months after Thanksgiving, I flew down for a weekend visit, determined to address the situation more comprehensively. The house appeared in worse condition. The kitchen sink leaked, the heating system functioned intermittently, and basic maintenance had clearly been deferred for years. "Let me hire someone to fix these issues," I offered after discovering the shower in the guest bathroom didn't work. "We had someone look at it," Dad said dismissively. "Wants $3,000 to repair the plumbing throughout the house. Highway robbery." "Then let me find another plumber for a second opinion," I persisted. "We don't need strangers judging our home," he snapped, ending the discussion. Later that evening, I noticed a delivery receipt for a high-end fishing rod, a $400 purchase made the previous week. Mom saw me looking at it and quickly tucked it into a drawer. "Your father needed something to keep his spirits up," she explained when Dad was outside. "The job search has been so demoralizing." I bit back my initial response, trying to understand how a man who couldn't afford home repairs justified such an extravagance. This wasn't the financially responsible father I'd grown up with, the man who taught me to save birthday money and research purchases carefully. The weekend visit revealed other concerning patterns. Despite their financial struggles, they still ordered takeout regularly. Dad maintained his premium cable package with sports channels. Mom continued her weekly hair appointments at a salon rather than considering more affordable options. When I gently suggested budget adjustments, Dad bristled. "We've worked hard all our lives. We're not giving up every small pleasure just because of a temporary setback." I returned to Seattle troubled and confused, sharing my observations with Ryan. "People have different relationships with money," he suggested kindly. "Maybe these small comforts help them cope with the bigger losses." "But I'm funding those comforts," I pointed out. "Money that could be going toward our future or helping them in more meaningful ways." The engagement party we'd planned for April became the next disappointment. 50 friends and family members gathered at our favorite Seattle restaurant, a private room decorated with photographs documenting our relationship. Everyone important to us attended, except my parents. The morning of the party, Mom called with apologies. "The car's making a terrible noise. Your father doesn't think it would make it to Seattle and back. I'll send a car service," I offered immediately. "Or buy you bus tickets. Whatever works." "Oh, that's too much trouble," she demurred. "We'll make it up to you next time we visit." I was hanging up, resigned to their absence, when a notification from my phone distracted me. A social media alert showing my cousin had tagged my parents in a post. The image showed them at a neighborhood barbecue, Dad manning the grill, Mom laughing with friends, the timestamp indicating it had been taken just an hour earlier. The betrayal stung more sharply than I expected. They hadn't even bothered to create a plausible excuse, or perhaps they'd forgotten how connected our extended family remained online. Either way, the message was clear: they'd chosen to avoid my celebration. The party proceeded without them. I smiled in photos, thanked guests for coming, and pretended their absence wasn't a gaping hole in the event. Ryan's parents drove from Tacoma, bringing thoughtful gifts and genuine enthusiasm for our future together. The contrast with my own parents' behavior couldn't have been more stark. 2 weeks later, I drove to Portland unannounced, determined to address the situation directly. The confrontation began the moment I walked through their door. You could have called, Dad said, clearly uncomfortable with my surprise appearance. Like you called to explain missing my engagement party? I countered, my professional composure abandoned.
I saw the barbecue photos, Dad.
You weren't having car trouble. Mom at least had the grace to look ashamed. We should have been honest with you. Yes, you should have. Just like you should be honest about how you're spending the money I send. Dad's expression hardened. You're keeping tabs on us now? Monitoring your investment.
That's not fair, I said.
I'm trying to help you get back on solid financial ground, but I can't do that if you're not transparent with me. The argument escalated until Mom finally intervened, suggesting we all take a breath. Over reluctant cups of coffee, the truth emerged in fragments. The mortgage payment for February, which I had covered, had never reached the bank. Instead, Dad had used the funds as a down payment on a used fishing boat, convinced he could generate income by taking tourists on Columbia River excursions. The tour business will pay for itself within months, he insisted, showing me hastily sketched business plans. I just need to get it licensed and ready for summer tourists. The boat, currently parked at a friend's property, had yet to generate a single booking. Meanwhile, the mortgage company had called me directly about the missed payment, creating awkward questions at work about my own financial reliability. This can't continue, I said finally. I want to help you, but not if you're making financial decisions that dig you deeper into trouble. The conversation ended with strained reconciliation. Dad grudgingly agreed to sell the boat and focus on conventional job opportunities. Mom promised better communication about their needs and spending. I committed to continuing support while they regained stability, though with clearer boundaries and expectations. Driving back to Seattle that evening, I called Ryan, emotionally exhausted. I don't know if I'm helping them or enabling them at this point. You're doing what any loving daughter would do, he assured me. But maybe we need to consider more structured assistance. His suggestion, consulting a financial counselor who specialized in family support situations, seemed reasonable, though I doubted my parents would agree to such intervention. The seed was planted, however, and would later prove crucial when the situation deteriorated further. Wedding planning should have been a joyful distraction from family tensions, but each decision became colored by financial considerations and the uncertain dynamics with my parents. The botanical garden venue required a substantial deposit 6 months in advance. The guest list remained in flux as I wavered between a larger celebration and a more intimate gathering. What kind of flowers do your parents like? The florist asked during our consultation. We could incorporate them into your mother's corsage and father's boutonniere. I realized I didn't know the answer. Such details had never seemed important in our practical household. When I called Mom to ask, her response was vague and disinterested. Dad didn't come to the phone at all. Their lack of enthusiasm extended beyond flowers. Mom declined to shop for a mother-of-the-bride dress, saying she'd find something in her closet. Dad didn't respond to emails about father-daughter dance songs. When Ryan's mother organized a small bridal shower, my parents sent a gift but didn't attend, citing distance though Ryan's relatives had traveled twice as far. They're going through a difficult time, I reminded myself, trying to suppress my growing resentment. But watching Ryan's family embrace wedding traditions with genuine joy highlighted everything missing from my own experience. The breaking point arrived unexpectedly on a Tuesday evening in May, 3 months before our wedding date. Dad called as I was preparing dinner, his voice animated with excitement I hadn't heard in years. Amber, I've found it, the opportunity that will turn everything around. His breathless explanation tumbled out in fragments. An old colleague from the construction industry, Thomas Jenkins, had approached him about investing in a new venture. Thomas had secured contracts to renovate several foreclosed properties for resale, a business capitalizing on the housing market's slow recovery. He needed investors to purchase materials and hire crews, promising returns of 15% within 6 months. He only has space for 3 investors, Dad continued. And he thought of me because of my industry experience. I could even work on the projects myself, earn a salary plus investment returns. My financial advisor instincts immediately activated. Have you seen the business plan? The contracts? Proof of Thomas's current financial standing? This isn't some Wall Street scheme, Dad said dismissively. It's real work on real properties. Thomas showed me the houses himself. That's not what I asked, Dad. Any legitimate investment opportunity should come with proper documentation. His tone cooled. I thought you'd be happy for me. This solves everything, gets me working again, provides income beyond just a salary, uses my expertise. I softened my approach, recognizing his need for purpose as much as profits. It might be a great opportunity. I'd just like to review the details before you commit. A pause followed, then the real reason for his call emerged. The buy-in is $75,000. Each investor gets equal shares. The amount took my breath away. Dad, that's not something I can just write a check for. That's more than I've sent you in total over the past year. It's an investment, not a handout, he insisted. You get your money back with interest. And isn't helping family what you're always talking about? This is your chance to make a real difference, not just patch holes in our budget. The conversation continued for an hour, his initial enthusiasm giving way to emotional manipulation when he met resistance. He reminded me of sacrifices made for my education, opportunities they'd provided, family obligations. When I continued to express concerns about the lack of documentation, he suggested my financial expertise was theoretical rather than practical and that I didn't understand real-world business opportunities. If you can spend thousands on flowers and fancy venues, you can invest in your own father's future, he said finally. I promised to consider the request and consult with Ryan, though my professional judgment already recognized numerous red flags. The following day, I researched Thomas Jenkins thoroughly, discovering a history of failed business ventures and 2 bankruptcies within the past decade. His current construction license had lapsed, and court records showed outstanding judgments from suppliers and subcontractors. Despite this troubling background, I recognized that refusing outright would further damage my relationship with Dad. After discussing options with Ryan and my own financial advisor, I crafted a compromise, a formal loan agreement with reasonable interest and a structured repayment plan beginning 3 months after the initial investment. The document included provisions for financial oversight and regular progress reports. When I presented this alternative to Dad, his reaction revealed volumes about his expectations. You want me to sign a loan agreement? With my own daughter? His voice conveyed shock and betrayal. We're family, not business associates. Precisely because we're family, we need clear terms, I explained. This protects our relationship by removing ambiguity. He eventually agreed, though his signature on the document came with palpable resentment. The $75,000 transferred from my savings account represented years of careful financial planning, now redirected to an investment I doubted would succeed. Still, I hoped the structured agreement would provide accountability and perhaps even motivate Dad to approach the venture more professionally. For several weeks, communication improved slightly. Dad sent photographs of renovation progress and forwarded emails about material purchases. Mom expressed cautious optimism about his renewed energy and purpose. I allowed myself to hope that perhaps this investment, despite its risks, might indeed help restore my father's confidence and our family's equilibrium. Then came the wedding day disaster. The August morning dawned clear and perfect in Seattle. My bridesmaids arrived early at the hotel suite, champagne and breakfast in tow. The photographer captured candid moments as hair and makeup artists transformed us. Mom had arrived the previous evening, staying in a nearby room, her demeanor pleasant but subdued. Dad's driving up separately, she explained when I asked about his arrival time. He needed to check on something at the work site first. By noon, with the ceremony scheduled for 3 o'clock, Dad still hadn't arrived or returned calls. Mom grew increasingly anxious, stepping out repeatedly to try reaching him. The celebration atmosphere dimmed as her worry infected the bridal party. Finally, my phone rang, Dad's number. I answered immediately, stepping into the bathroom for privacy. Where are you? Mom's worried sick. His voice sounded strained, traffic noise in the background. I'm still in Portland. There's been a situation with the project.
What? You're supposed to be here, Dad.
I'm getting married in 3 hours. I know, and I'm trying to resolve this quickly. Thomas had an emergency with one of the properties, a water main break that's threatening the foundation. We need immediate repairs, or we could lose the whole investment. My stomach sank. So, you're saying you might miss the ceremony? I'm saying I need your help. The contractor wants $15,000 to come out on a weekend and fix this before the city condemns the property. Thomas is out of town, the other investor isn't answering, and our business account won't clear the deposit until Monday. The request hung between us, its implications crystal clear. You're asking me for more money? Today? On my wedding day? I wouldn't if it wasn't an emergency, he insisted. This is about protecting your investment too. If this property gets condemned, we lose everything we've put into it. The suite outside the bathroom door hummed with activity. Friends laughing, music playing, champagne corks popping. My wedding dress hung by the window, catching sunlight through delicate lace. Two worlds collided in that moment. The joyful future I was stepping into and the troubled past that refused to release its grip. Dad, I can't deal with this today. Whatever's happening with the property will have to wait until tomorrow. By tomorrow the basement could be underwater and the foundation compromised, he countered. I'm not asking for a gift, just an emergency loan. I'll add it to our agreement. No, I said firmly, surprising myself with the clarity of my refusal. Not today. Today you need to be my father, not a business partner with an emergency. Get in the car and drive to Seattle. We'll figure out the property situation after the wedding. Silence stretched between us. Then his voice turned cold. If this investment fails because you wouldn't help, that's on you. $75,000 down the drain because you're too selfish to help your own family in a crisis. That's not fair, I began, but he interrupted. You know what? If your wedding is more important than your parents' financial survival, fine. Make your choice. But don't expect me to pretend everything's okay by smiling in your photographs and dancing at your reception. What are you saying? His ultimatum came without hesitation. Either wire the money within the hour, or don't show up at our house again. I'm done being your charity case. Shock rendered me momentarily speechless. When I found my voice, it emerged steady despite the emotions roiling beneath. I love you, Dad, but I won't be manipulated, especially not today. I hope you'll reconsider and join us, but I understand if you can't. I ended the call before he could respond, hands shaking as I set down the phone. Taking a moment to compose myself, I returned to the bridal suite, where Mom immediately recognized something was wrong. Taking her aside, I explained the situation in hushed tones. Horror crossed her face as I recounted Dad's ultimatum. He can't mean that, she whispered. Let me call him. She stepped out, returning 10 minutes later with reddened eyes and a forced smile. He's not coming. I'm so sorry, sweetheart. The ceremony proceeded without my father. Mom walked me down the aisle, her small frame straight with determination despite the whispers about Dad's absence. When the minister asked who gives this woman in marriage, her voice wavered but didn't break. I do, on behalf of our family. Ryan's eyes held nothing but love as we exchanged vows, his steady presence an anchor amid emotional turbulence. We danced, cut cake, and thanked guests, a perfect celebration by all outward appearances. Only those closest to me recognized the grief beneath my smile or understood why the father-daughter dance was quietly removed from the program. Mom left immediately after the reception, citing a headache but clearly desperate to return home and address the situation with Dad. Her parting hug conveyed volumes: apology, solidarity, heartbreak. He loves you, she whispered. He's just lost himself somewhere along the way. As our wedding night began, Ryan held me while I finally released the tears I'd suppressed all day. I don't know who my father is anymore, I confessed. And I don't know how to help someone who keeps rejecting me. We'll figure it out, Ryan promised, though neither of us understood yet how complicated that process would become. Hawaii embraced us with gentle breezes and azure waters, a paradise designed for newlywed bliss. Our resort suite overlooked the ocean, palm trees framing a view straight from travel magazines. Under different circumstances, the honeymoon would have been perfectly idyllic. Reality intruded despite our best efforts. I checked my phone compulsively, hoping for a message from Dad, an apology, an explanation, anything to indicate his cruel ultimatum had been spoken in the heat of the moment rather than genuine sentiment. None came. Mom texted daily with generic updates, carefully avoiding mention of the wedding day disaster or Dad's current state of mind. Ryan noticed my distraction but didn't press, instead finding small ways to pull me back into our shared experience: surprise picnics on secluded beaches, couples massages, midnight swims beneath the stars. His patience and understanding only highlighted the toxic dynamics I'd been navigating with my family. "You deserve better," he said one evening as we watched the sunset. "Your parents are adults responsible for their own choices. You've gone above and beyond what most children would do." Intellectually, I knew he was right. Emotionally, I remained entangled in obligation and guilt, decades of family identity not easily discarded. "We'll address it when we get home," I decided, making a conscious effort to be present for the remainder of our trip. "They've survived this long without me fixing everything. Another week won't matter." That resolution lasted until our third-to-last day in Hawaii, when an urgent email from my cousin Stephanie arrived with a link to the Portland Business Journal. The headline instantly shattered my honeymoon bubble: "Local contractor facing fraud charges in house flipping scheme." The article detailed allegations against Thomas Jenkins, accused of collecting investment funds for renovation projects while performing minimal work and siphoning money for personal expenses. Properties remained largely untouched despite investor funds being depleted. At least 6 families had filed complaints, with total losses estimated at over $500,000. My hands trembled as I read the details, recognizing the exact scenario I'd feared when Dad first mentioned the opportunity. The emergency on my wedding day had likely been fabricated, another attempt to extract funds for a failing scheme. The $75,000 I'd provided was almost certainly gone. Ryan read over my shoulder, his arm tightening around me. "I'm so sorry, Amber. Do you want to go back early?" I considered the option briefly before shaking my head. "There's nothing I can do right now that can't wait until we return as scheduled. Let's not give this situation more power than it already has." We completed our honeymoon with a shadow hanging over us, though I made genuine efforts to appreciate our remaining time together. The flight back to Seattle felt like a transition not just from vacation to reality, but from one chapter of my life to another, marriage beginning as family relationships unraveled. 3 days after our return, as I settled back into work routines, our apartment doorbell rang unexpectedly. Through the peephole, I saw Mom standing alone, her appearance shocking me into momentary immobility. Always meticulously groomed, she now looked disheveled and exhausted, hair uncombed, wearing mismatched clothes that hung loosely on her frame. "Mom," I opened the door, instantly concerned. "What happened? Why didn't you call first?" She stepped inside, clutching her purse like a shield. "I didn't want you to tell me not to come." The living room felt suddenly small as she perched on the edge of our sofa, declining offers of tea or water. Her hands twisted nervously in her lap, wedding ring rotating around a finger that had grown too thin for it. "Your father doesn't know I'm here," she began, voice barely above a whisper. "He'd be furious if he found out." "Is he hurt? In trouble?" She gave a hollow laugh. "Both, I suppose, though not in the ways you might think." The story emerged gradually, painful truths extracted like splinters buried deep in flesh. The investment with Thomas Jenkins had indeed collapsed spectacularly. The promised contracts had been greatly exaggerated or completely fabricated. The properties shown to investors required far more extensive renovation than disclosed, many having structural issues that made them financial sinkholes rather than opportunities. "The police interviewed your father yesterday," Mom said. "They don't think he was involved in the fraud, just another victim, but all the money is gone. Thomas apparently left the state last week." I absorbed this information with a strange sense of detachment. The loss was significant, but not surprising given the red flags I'd identified from the beginning. "I'm sorry about the investment," I said carefully, "but we can recover from financial setbacks." That doesn't explain why you're here looking like you haven't slept in days. Mom's composure cracked, tears spilling onto her cheeks. It's not just the investment, Amber. It's everything. The house is in foreclosure again. We have 60 days before they auction it. Your father. Her voice broke completely. I moved beside her, offering tissues and waiting while she collected herself. Your father has a gambling problem, she finally admitted. It started years ago, small bets on sports games. I thought it was just a hobby. Then he began visiting casinos when traveling for work, taking cash advances on credit cards, borrowing from friends. Each revelation hit like a physical blow. The father who had taught me financial responsibility, who had checked my math on savings account interest calculations, who had warned about the dangers of debt, that man had been living a double life of addiction and deception. How long? I asked, mind racing through years of interactions, searching for signs I'd missed. At least 10 years, she confessed. It got worse after he was demoted during the first round of company cutbacks. The stress, the blow to his pride. He said gambling made him feel in control again. The timeline aligned with subtle changes I'd noticed during college visits home. Dad's increased irritability, Mom's heightened anxiety, unexplained tensions when financial topics arose. What I'd attributed to normal family evolution had actually been the progressive impact of a hidden addiction. The job loss last year wasn't just company downsizing, Mom continued. He was fired for borrowing money from a client. They agreed not to press charges if he left quietly. The deceptions multiplied. Dad's construction company hadn't downsized. He'd been terminated for ethical violations. The medical bills weren't primarily for Mom's thyroid condition but included treatments for Dad's stress-related health issues and one emergency room visit after he'd passed out at a casino. The family home hadn't fallen into disrepair from normal aging but from systematically redirecting maintenance funds to gambling debts. Why didn't you tell me? I asked, hurt competing with concern. All those times, I asked what was really going on. Mom's shoulders hunched with shame. At first, I thought I was protecting our family's privacy, maintaining dignity. Then it became about protecting you from disappointment in your father. Eventually, I was so tangled in lies that the truth seemed impossible to share. Her gaze finally met mine, eyes hollow with exhaustion. I've enabled his addiction for years, making excuses, covering for him, pretending everything was fixable. I was wrong and I'm sorry. The apology felt simultaneously insufficient and overwhelmingly sincere. This woman who had shaped my earliest understanding of marriage and partnership now sat before me, acknowledging her role in a dysfunctional system that had nearly destroyed our family. What's happening now? I asked, moving into problem-solving mode to manage my own emotional turmoil. The immediate crisis, beyond the investment collapse and foreclosure notice, was Dad's refusal to acknowledge his gambling addiction despite overwhelming evidence. The wedding day emergency had actually been a substantial gambling loss disguised as a business need. When funds weren't forthcoming, he'd spiraled further, taking cash advances against their remaining credit card to chase his losses. He's not the man I married anymore, Mom whispered. Not the father you remember. When he saw me gathering financial documents after the police left, he accused me of spying on him, plotting against him. She'd left the house with little more than her purse, and the paperwork now spread across my coffee table. Bank statements showing consistent large cash withdrawals, credit card bills with cash advances and casino hotel charges, collection notices from personal loans I'd known nothing about. I don't know what to do, she admitted, but I can't keep pretending. Not anymore. Ryan arrived home midway through our conversation, quickly assessing the situation and providing quiet support. His software engineer's methodical mind helped organize the chaotic financial information into comprehensible categories, while his compassion created space for Mom's continued emotional revelations. That evening, we faced difficult realities. Mom couldn't return home immediately, not with Dad in his current volatile state. She would stay in our guest room temporarily. The foreclosure required immediate professional intervention beyond what I could provide personally. Most challenging, Dad's gambling addiction needed treatment he wasn't yet willing to accept. As I prepared the guest room, setting out fresh towels, and finding an extra phone charger. The magnitude of the situation settled over me. My wedding and honeymoon should have been the beginning of my own family story. Instead, they had become twisted up in the unraveling of my parents' lives. "I'm sorry," Mom said from the doorway, watching me tuck sheets into the corners of the bed. "This isn't what you need right now as newlyweds." The apology triggered unexpected anger, not at her presence, but at the years of secrecy that had culminated in this crisis. "What I needed was honesty, Mom. Years ago, when something might have been done before it got this bad." She nodded, accepting the rebuke without defense. "You're right. Fear makes cowards of us all." Later that night, after Mom had gone to bed, Ryan and I sat at our kitchen table, the scattered financial documents telling a story of systematic deception and deterioration. "What do you want to do?" he asked simply. The question carried multiple dimensions about Mom's situation, Dad's addiction, the foreclosure, the lost investment, our own financial future now compromised by these entanglements. "I don't know," I admitted. Professionally, I advise clients in financial crises every day. But this is different. It's personal and messy, and there's no clean solution. Ryan reached across the table, taking my hand. "We don't have to figure it all out tonight. But whatever you decide, we'll face it together." His steadiness anchored me as I navigated unfamiliar emotional terrain, betrayal by the father I'd idolized, concern for my enabling mother, anger at their collective deception, and uncertainty about appropriate boundaries going forward. "One thing I know," I said finally, "we can't keep this pattern going. Whatever help we offer has to be different from what I've been doing. It hasn't worked, and it might have actually made things worse." That night marked the beginning of a new approach, one that would ultimately require professional intervention, painful confrontations, and redefined family relationships. The path forward remained unclear, but the commitment to change was firmly established. Taking emergency leave from work wasn't ideal 3 weeks after returning from my honeymoon, but my supervisor proved unexpectedly understanding when I explained the situation. "Family addiction issues affect more people than you might think," she said, approving my request. "Take the time you need to set up proper supports." The next 72 hours unfolded in a blur of appointments and phone calls. I consulted with the Employee Assistance Program's financial counselor, who recommended a forensic accountant specializing in gambling-related family crises. The accountant connected us with a lawyer experienced in foreclosure intervention. The lawyer suggested a family therapist who worked with addiction specialists. Each professional represented a piece of the comprehensive response needed to address my parents' multi-layered crisis. Each also reinforced a crucial message. Recovery required my father's willing participation, not just financial bailouts or legal maneuvers. Mom stayed with us during this preparation phase, alternating between helpful determination and paralyzing guilt. Some moments found her energetically organizing documents and making calls. Others saw her staring vacantly out windows, lost in recriminations about enabling Dad's addiction for so long. "I should have confronted him years ago," she repeated during one such episode. "When the amounts were smaller, when he still had his job, when he might have listened." "You can't change the past," Ryan reminded her gently. "But you're taking steps now, and that matters." Dad, meanwhile, maintained minimal contact. His text messages to Mom veered between angry accusations and manipulative apologies, a pattern the addiction counselor identified as typical for someone unwilling to acknowledge their problem. He ignored my calls entirely, his ultimatum from the wedding day apparently still in effect. By the 4th day, we had assembled what Ryan dubbed our intervention team: the financial counselor, addiction specialist, family therapist, and lawyer. Together, we developed a structured approach to address both the immediate financial emergency and the underlying addiction. "We need to be clear about conditions," the addiction specialist emphasized during our planning session. "Financial help must be contingent on treatment participation. Otherwise, you're simply funding the next gambling episode." The plan required me to adopt a mindset contrary to my nature, setting firm boundaries with strict consequences rather than providing unconditional support. Professional expertise helped me understand this wasn't cruelty, but necessary structure for potential recovery. On Friday morning, our team arrived at my parents' home in Portland, having coordinated with Mom to ensure Dad would be present. She had told him only that financial advisors were coming to discuss the foreclosure situation, omitting details about the intervention nature of the meeting. The house I'd grown up in seemed diminished somehow, neglect evident in overgrown landscaping and peeling paint. Dad answered the door with suspicious eyes, his appearance shockingly changed in the weeks since I'd last seen him. Weight loss had hollowed his cheeks, and several days stubble-peppered his normally clean-shaven face. "What's all this?" he demanded, noting the group entering his living room. "I thought we were meeting a bank representative." Mom stepped forward, voice steadier than I'd heard recently. "David, we need to talk about everything that's happening. All of it, not just the foreclosure." His gaze darted between faces, lingering on mine with something between resentment and shame. "You brought your daughter to witness our humiliation? Perfect. I'm here to help, Dad," I said calmly, the script we'd prepared guiding my words. "We all are. But real help means addressing the real problems." The addiction specialist took over, introducing himself and explaining the purpose of the meeting. Dad's expression hardened as understanding dawned. "This is an intervention? You think I'm some junkie needing rehab? Gambling addiction is a recognized disorder," the specialist explained evenly. "And yes, treatment approaches share similarities with substance addiction programs." Dad turned to Mom, betrayal etched in his features. "You told them private things? Family business." "I told them the truth," she replied, hands trembling but voice firm. "Something we should have faced together years ago." What followed was the most difficult 3 hours of my life. The financial counselor presented documentation of gambling patterns spanning a decade, bank withdrawals coinciding with casino visits, credit card cash advances, loans from increasingly questionable sources. The total amount lost exceeded $200,000, not including the recent investment scheme. "That's my money to spend," Dad insisted when confronted with the evidence. "Not when it affects your family's security," the counselor countered. "Not when it's borrowed or taken under false pretenses." The lawyer outlined the foreclosure situation, worse than we'd initially understood. The mortgage company had already scheduled an auction date, with prospects for postponement limited by previous modification attempts. "There are options," she explained, "but they require immediate action and complete financial transparency going forward." Throughout these presentations, Dad's defenses cycled through predictable patterns: denial, minimization, deflection, anger. He characterized gambling losses as business investments and entertainment expenses. He blamed the economy, unscrupulous casinos, and unsupportive family for his financial troubles. When those arguments failed, he attacked us personally. "Easy for you to judge from your fancy Seattle job," he snapped at me during one exchange. "You have no idea what real pressure feels like." "This isn't about judgment," I responded, sticking to our prepared approach. "It's about getting appropriate help for a situation that's hurting everyone, especially you." The addiction specialist skillfully redirected such moments, maintaining focus on the core issues rather than allowing emotional tangents to derail the intervention. Each professional presented their assessment directly but compassionately, acknowledging the pain while refusing to endorse the deceptions. Finally, we reached the crucial moment, presenting conditions for my financial assistance moving forward. The forensic accountant had prepared a comprehensive plan addressing immediate crises and long-term recovery, with my financial support contingent on specific commitments from both parents. "We can stabilize the housing situation," I explained, "but only with these conditions in place." The requirements included: 1. Dad entering a structured gambling addiction treatment program. 2. Both parents participating in financial counseling. 3. All accounts becoming transparent and jointly managed. 4. A repayment plan for the previous loan, even if nominal. 5. Regular family therapy sessions to rebuild trust and communication. Mom nodded agreement as each condition was presented. Dad's expression darkened further. "So you're using money to control us," he concluded. "Blackmailing your own father." "No," The family therapist interjected. These are boundaries, not threats. Amber is offering substantial help, but with structures that ensure the help actually solves problems rather than enabling their continuation. And if I refuse your conditions? Dad challenged, looking directly at me. The moment I dreaded had arrived, articulating consequences that weren't empty threats. The addiction specialist had prepared me for this critical juncture, emphasizing that recovery rarely begins without clear understanding of what's at stake. Then I'll still help Mom with her needs, I said steadily, but I won't provide funds that might enable continued gambling. And I won't contribute to financial arrangements where there's no accountability. You'd let us lose the house? After everything we did for you? The guilt tactic that had worked so effectively in the past now met prepared resistance. I'm offering a way to address the house situation that includes treatment for the underlying problem. That's the most meaningful help I can give. His explosion came then. Accusations of betrayal, reminders of parental sacrifices, declarations that I'd abandoned family loyalty for cold financial logic. The verbal assault continued until Mom finally intervened. David, stop. Her voice cut through his tirade with unexpected authority. Listen to yourself. This is our daughter, who's trying to help despite how badly we've hurt her. I've spent years making excuses for your behavior, covering your tracks, pretending everything was normal. I can't do it anymore. Dad stared at her as though seeing a stranger. You're choosing her side? Against your husband? There aren't sides, she responded. There's just reality versus denial. I'm choosing reality, and I hope you will too. The standoff lingered, tension filling the room as Dad visibly struggled with this united front against his denial. Finally, he stood, expression closed. I need some air, he announced, moving toward the door. The addiction specialist had warned us this might happen. The person confronted often walks out rather than immediately accepting help. Let him go, he advised quietly. He needs time to process. This is just the beginning of a long process. Dad paused at the doorway, turning back with a cold stare directed at me. I didn't raise you to be this heartless. The words stung despite my preparation for emotional manipulation. I love you, Dad. That's why I'm here instead of walking away. He left without responding, the front door closing with deliberate control rather than angry slamming, somehow more final than any dramatic exit could have been. In the silence that followed, Mom's shoulders slumped as tension drained into exhaustion. What happens now? She asked the room at large. The addiction specialist outlined next steps, maintaining consistency in our approach, pursuing treatment options for when Dad became ready, implementing financial protections regardless of his participation. The lawyer discussed immediate measures to delay foreclosure proceedings while more permanent solutions were explored. And what about you? I asked Mom privately as the professionals gathered their materials. Will you stay here tonight? She glanced around the house, decades of memories competing with recent revelations.
No.
I think I'll go to my sister's for a while. Some distance might help us both think more clearly. As our intervention team departed, I remained behind to help Mom pack essentials. The quiet efficiency of our movements contrasted sharply with the emotional intensity of the preceding hours. In her bedroom, she paused before a photograph on her dresser, my parents on their 25th anniversary, smiling at a celebration I'd organized, happiness that now seemed to belong to different people. I still love him, she said softly. The man in this picture. The father who taught you to ride a bike and checked your homework. I don't know if that man still exists somewhere inside the person he's become. I had no answer for this fundamental uncertainty. Instead, I helped her finish packing, drove her to my aunt's house, and finally returned to Seattle, emotionally exhausted but oddly resolved. The confrontation had been painful but necessary, removing illusions that had allowed the situation to deteriorate for years. Ryan waited at home, concern evident as he embraced me. How bad was it? About as difficult as we expected, I admitted. Dad walked out, Mom staying with her sister, and nothing's really resolved. But it started, he pointed out. The truth is finally acknowledged, even if your dad isn't ready to accept it yet. That night, Lying awake beside my sleeping husband, I processed the day's events. The father who had once seemed infallible now appeared deeply flawed and human. The childhood home that represented security now faced uncertain fate. The family identity I'd carried throughout my life had fundamentally shifted. Yet alongside these painful recognitions came unexpected clarity. For years, I'd tried to fix my parents' problems with money and avoidance, approaches that had ultimately enabled deeper dysfunction. Today's intervention, though traumatic, had finally aligned our actions with reality rather than comfortable fictions. Recovery would not be linear or guaranteed. Dad might never accept treatment or acknowledge his addiction. The family home might ultimately be lost despite our efforts. Relationships might remain strained indefinitely. These possibilities required acceptance rather than denial. As dawn brightened the window, I made peace with this uncertainty. Some outcomes remained beyond my control, but I had finally stopped participating in destructive patterns. That boundary represented its own form of love, more mature and ultimately more helpful than the enabling assistance I'd offered before. 3 months passed with little communication from Dad. The addiction specialist assured us this wasn't unusual, describing a processing period when the person confronted needed to experience consequences before becoming receptive to help. Mom called regularly from my aunt's house, reporting occasional text exchanges with Dad, but no substantive conversations about treatment or reconciliation. Meanwhile, professional interventions proceeded on multiple fronts. The lawyer negotiated a temporary stay on foreclosure proceedings, contingent on a structured payment plan I guaranteed. The financial counselor worked with Mom to understand their complete financial situation, uncovering additional debts, but also identifying assets that could help stabilize their position. The therapist provided weekly sessions for Mom, who gradually shifted from self-recrimination to more balanced understanding of codependency dynamics. I returned to work, explaining the situation to my supervisor in professional terms that nonetheless conveyed the personal impact. Her continued support proved invaluable as I balanced career responsibilities with family crisis management. Ryan demonstrated similar understanding, taking over household tasks during my frequent Portland trips and providing emotional sanctuary when the situation overwhelmed me. Despite these supports, the emotional toll manifested physically: tension headaches, disrupted sleep, concentration difficulties during client meetings. The family therapist recommended I pursue individual counseling, advice I initially resisted but ultimately accepted when performance issues emerged at work. You can't effectively help others if you're depleted yourself, my therapist observed during our first session. Even financial advisors need emotional balance sheets. This perspective helped me recognize patterns of my own: perfectionism, excessive responsibility-taking, identity tied to problem-solving. These traits had served me professionally, but became liabilities when applied to family addiction dynamics. Gradually, I developed healthier boundaries and expectations, learning that supporting recovery didn't mean controlling outcomes. The first breakthrough with Dad came unexpectedly in December, nearly 4 months after the intervention. My phone displayed an unfamiliar number with a Portland area code. "Is this Amber Wilson?" a woman's voice asked when I answered. "Yes," I confirmed cautiously. "This is Patricia Lawson, counselor at Oregon Recovery Center. Your father, David Wilson, has given permission for me to contact you." The addiction center wasn't one we'd recommended, but her explanation revealed Dad had found it independently after hitting bottom, financially and emotionally. He'd been in residential treatment for 2 weeks, having finally acknowledged his gambling addiction after another significant loss left him unable to pay rent on his apartment. "He's doing intensive work," the counselor explained. "Part of his recovery involves making amends where possible. He's asked if you would consider a supervised family session next week." The request simultaneously sparked hope and anxiety. The family therapist advised cautious optimism, emphasizing that recovery included relationship repair, but also warning against unrealistic expectations from early progress. The meeting took place in a neutral setting, a coffee shop near the treatment center. Dad arrived with his counselor, his appearance notably improved from our last encounter. Proper nutrition and regular sleep had restored some physical health, though emotional healing remained visibly in progress. Our conversation began awkwardly, polite formalities masking deeper uncertainties. The counselor guided us skillfully, creating space for Dad to practice new communication skills while ensuring I maintained appropriate boundaries. "I've been unfair to you," he admitted after preliminary exchanges. "For years, not just at the wedding. I blamed you for setting boundaries I should have set for myself." The acknowledgement, though limited, represented significant progress from previous interactions. He struggled visibly with direct apology, pride still competing with recovery principles, but managed to express regret for specific incidents without defensive qualifications. "The investment scheme was my responsibility," he stated plainly. "I didn't do proper research because I was desperate for a quick solution. Then I tried to manipulate you for more money rather than facing the consequences." I maintained the balanced approach recommended by my therapist, acknowledging his efforts without either dismissing past harm or holding it as an insurmountable barrier. When the session ended, we agreed to further meetings as his treatment progressed, establishing gradual reconnection rather than immediate restoration. "It's strange," I told Ryan afterward. "Part of me wants to immediately trust that everything's fixed, while another part remains deeply skeptical." "Both reactions make sense," he observed. "Trust gets rebuilt in small increments, not grand gestures." Over subsequent months, incremental changes accumulated across multiple dimensions of the family crisis. Mom found part-time work at a community college library, the flexible schedule accommodating her ongoing health needs while providing modest income and renewed purpose. Dad completed residential treatment and transitioned to intensive outpatient programming, securing entry-level work at a hardware store, significantly below his previous construction management position but aligned with treatment recommendations to reduce stress during early recovery. The family home could not be saved despite our efforts. The accumulated debt and missed payments created a mathematical impossibility that no payment plan could overcome. This outcome, once unthinkable, became a necessary step towards sustainable financial recovery. The lawyer negotiated a dignity-preserving exit, voluntary surrender rather than formal eviction, with sufficient time to properly relocate. Mom found an affordable one-bedroom apartment near my aunt's neighborhood, furnished with essential items from the family home and supplemented by practical housewarming gifts from extended family. Dad initially moved to transitional housing associated with his treatment program, eventually securing a studio apartment within his limited budget. The formal loan agreement for the $75,000 investment remained in place, though, with adjusted expectations. Dad committed to symbolic monthly payments of $50, an amount that acknowledged the debt without creating unrealistic financial pressure during early recovery. The addiction specialist endorsed this approach, noting that financial accountability represented an important recovery principle even when full repayment wasn't immediately possible. Family therapy sessions continued, sometimes separately with each parent, other times in various combinations as relationships gradually reconfigured. These structured conversations created space for addressing long-buried issues: Mom's resentment about years of financial deception, Dad's shame about addiction progression, my anger about wedding day manipulation, their collective grief about losing the family home. Recovery isn't just about stopping the addictive behavior, the family therapist explained. It's about healing the relationship patterns that developed around it. This healing proceeded unevenly, with progress and setbacks characterizing each relationship. Mom and I developed new closeness based on honesty rather than protective filtering. Dad's relationship with me improved in some areas while remaining strained in others, particularly financial discussions. My parents' marriage entered ambiguous territory, neither fully reconciled nor completely severed, as they navigated separate living arrangements while maintaining regular contact. Throughout this period, Ryan demonstrated exceptional patience and support, never complaining about family crisis intrusions into our newlywed life. His perspective often provided valuable balance when emotions clouded my judgment. "They're making better choices now," he observed after a particularly difficult therapy session where old resentments resurfaced. "Not perfect choices, but better ones. That's significant progress." One year after the intervention, we gathered at a restaurant to celebrate Mom's birthday, a simple dinner representing complicated achievement. Dad arrived punctually, bringing a modest bouquet purchased with his own honestly earned money. Mom accepted the flowers with genuine appreciation rather than the anxious people-pleasing that had characterized previous interactions. I watched their exchange with cautious optimism, recognizing healthier dynamics beneath the surface awkwardness. During dessert, Dad discreetly showed me his 9-month sobriety chip, pride evident in this tangible symbol of recovery commitment. The milestone wasn't without context. He'd experienced one relapse at 3 months, a setback that had strengthened rather than derailed his treatment engagement. "One day at a time," he said, echoing the recovery program's central philosophy. "Some days are harder than others, but they're all worth the effort." My professional accomplishments continued alongside these family developments. The focus and resilience developed through personal challenges translated to career strengths, resulting in promotion to senior portfolio manager with expanded client responsibilities. Ryan's software engineering career similarly advanced, our combined financial security gradually rebuilding after the significant investment loss. The dinner concluded with unexpected news. My pregnancy, revealed after considerable discussion about timing amid ongoing family recovery. The announcement generated genuine celebration, momentarily transcending complicated histories with shared anticipation of new beginnings. "I want to be a grandfather my grandchild can respect," Dad said quietly as we parted, vulnerability replacing the defensive posturing that had dominated previous years. "You're on that path," I assured him, acknowledging progress without ignoring continuing challenges. The journey of the past year had fundamentally changed my understanding of family dynamics, addiction impacts, and the complexities of genuine help versus enabling assistance. Lessons emerged that would shape my approach to both personal relationships and professional advising. Addiction distorts relationships in concentric circles, affecting not just the addicted person but everyone connected to them. The gambling had not been Dad's private struggle, but a family disease requiring family recovery. Financial support without accountability often enables rather than helps, regardless of good intentions. Money provided without appropriate structure had perpetuated rather than solved problems. Professional intervention brings expertise family members cannot provide themselves. The specialized knowledge of addiction counselors, financial experts, and therapists had proven essential to addressing multilayered crises. Recovery involves grieving what was lost while building what remains possible. The family home, previous relationship patterns, and idealized images had all required release before healing could progress. Forgiveness doesn't require forgetting or pretending harm didn't occur. Balancing accountability with compassion remained an ongoing practice rather than a single decision point. Healing follows its own timeline rather than convenient schedules. The nonlinear, sometimes frustrating pace of recovery had taught patience and persistence. Boundaries express love when they support health rather than enabling dysfunction. Setting limits had ultimately proven more caring than unlimited financial rescue attempts. As I prepared for parenthood, these insights informed my hopes for creating healthier family patterns in the next generation. The child growing within me would inherit complex family history, but also the wisdom gained through confronting rather than avoiding difficult truths. The story hadn't ended with perfect resolution. Dad's recovery remained relatively new, Mom's independence continued developing, financial consequences lingered in various forms. Yet alongside these continuing challenges, genuine healing had begun, offering hope that wasn't based on denial, but on facing reality with appropriate supports. "What was your biggest lesson from this past year?" Ryan asked as we drove home from the birthday dinner. I considered the question carefully, wanting to capture the essential truth among many realizations. "That love sometimes requires making the harder choice," I finally answered. "Not the comfortable one or the immediately pleasing one, but the one that honors truth and supports actual health, even when it feels terrible in the moment." The wisdom seemed inadequate for the complexity we'd navigated, yet it represented a fundamental shift in my approach to both family relationships and life challenges. Sometimes the most loving action isn't the easiest or most obvious, but the one that respects reality while maintaining connection through difficult truths. Have you ever had to make a difficult decision because it was the right thing to do, even when it hurt? Or supported someone you love through addiction or financial hardship? Share your experience in the comments below. Your story might help someone facing similar challenges right now. Don't forget to like and subscribe if this story resonated with you, and share it with anyone who might need to hear that setting boundaries with family is sometimes the most loving thing you can do. Thank you for listening, and remember, healing is possible even after the most painful betrayals.